Toko Katoa, and a big welcome. It's my absolute pleasure to host this second in our series of second tranche of webinars celebrating 10 years of the online MBA. My name's Tony Gary and I'm the MBA Director. But it's my real pleasure this evening to introduce Andrew Gillies as our guest tonight. And personally, a big shout out to Andrew for stepping in at the last minute. Malcolm Fraser fell to the problems of long haul travel, and I think he's actually on a flight at the moment. So thank you, Andrew. But delighted to welcome you, Andrew. A little bit of background, if I may. Andrew's got over 20 years experience in global business blue chip companies, but has also been an internationally experienced managing director and board member. So I think you've particularly got experience in growth acceleration, delivering into international expansion, driving new market entry, and developing startups. But you'll freely admit that you've hit a few potholes, if I can put it like that, to steal a phrase you use, Andrew, along the way. But you very kindly agreed to do at short notice is to give us a presentation on that and how to avoid those potholes. I should say you're back in New Zealand, currently in Central, so I hope you're managing to stay warm there, Andrew, at the moment. But you're still working for organisations locally, nationally and internationally. But you're also on the Board of Trustees for Startup Queenstown Lake, helping support the next generation of business founders in the region. Now, before I hand over to Andrew, we'd like to try a slightly different format tonight as best we can with the webinar. Andrew's going to, I think, ask a few questions and maybe ask for a few answers. But what we'd like to do, because we're in webinar mode, is for you to put your questions and answers into the Q&A box, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen, and I shall channel them towards Andrew. Perhaps that's the phrase. So, without further ado, I'll hand over to Andrew to give his presentation, which tonight is executing strategy to take business to the next level, learning from a C-suite. Thank you, Andrew. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Gary. I was chuckling away to myself when you were making that fantastic introduction. It sounded all very grandiose and amazing. And for a bloke who's now sitting in 10 acres in Central Otago and spends his days chopping firewood and mending fences and bits and pieces, it feels a long way away. But there were lots of learnings on the way. And so it's nice to be able to be here tonight and to talk to the MBA cohort and alumni. So to everybody on the call, I can't see you all. I don't know how many of you are there. When I was asked to put this presentation together was Thursday last week. I was pretty time short anyway. I've got 2 young children, which we'll get on into a moment. And typically, I like being in the room. I like being able to walk around. I like being able to gesticulate with my hands. I like being able to interact with the audience. And so I created a presentation which actually had a bit of interactivity in it. You just learned that that's not quite going to be possible because of the format we're using tonight. So apologies if every now and then we're stumbling over a few bits and pieces, but we'll just see how we get through it. So let me tell you a little bit about myself first. Just want to check, Tony, we can see these slides okay? Great, I got a nod. You're on mute, but I got a nod.
Yeah, so yeah, all good. On to the next slide.
Great stuff. So a little bit about me, just to help scenes here, and that was a great intro from Tony. So background, I'm a Dunedin boy. Grew up in the halfway bush, top of Dunedin, up on the snow line there. Went to Otago boys and did not go to University of Otago, although I did spend an inordinate amount of my time with students, typically in the drinking holes, which were great in those days. Now, I went off to the New Zealand military, spent a number of years there, and then left there and moved over into Australia, where I took up a role with Fay Richwhite, which was a New Zealand merchant bank at the time. And that was looking at starting an Amazon, if you can believe it, an online e-commerce business. This is in the years of dial-up modems back in the 90s. So way, way, way ahead of its time. And great idea, just too early. And a number of other roles in Australia. I then moved over after a while to the United Kingdom, obviously gateway to Europe for us. Whilst there, was in a number of different roles, but just a couple of highlights for you. I did an MBA at Henley Business School. Probably the best thing I've done in my career, most important thing I've probably done in shaping my life. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on why that is later on. I had a great role, which really was a awakening for me, being always look at yourself as still being that boy from Dunedin, that boy from halfway bush. But I had a role as chair of the Food Service Directors Group. That group was the leaders of organizations such as Mars, Nestle, Unilever, Compass Group, McDonald's, Whitbread, all of these large food service operators, distributors, manufacturers. And that was just helping those leaders get into a room and discuss how they could actually work better to drive efficiency within their supply chains, as well as to drive information transfer for the betterment of the end consumer, so food allergen information, etc. So creating some commonality. I seemed to carve out a career in accelerated growth, and that was purely by working with some amazing people. And I feel very, very fortunate for that to have happened. But whilst working with them, I think I had the right Kiwi attitude, which was to keep my mouth shut, basically. Sorry for it sounds a bit harsh, and keep my ears wide open and observe and observe and observe and learn from these individuals. I always felt in awe of them at the time. And I think that was a good place to be because it means I really did act like a sponge. And luckily enough, in the organizations I was with, I was able to be around some amazing people, learn some amazing things. And that helped me carve out some strengths of my own, which started to get noticed. So within the UK, I picked up some pretty key roles. One was a managing director of information insights, which is Logicalis. It turns over about $1 billion US dollars, so a couple of billion in New Zealand, and that was taking it from far, far, far smaller than that. We're a business unit within Logicalis, so taking it from a few million into the hundreds. And then into MD of Sedgening, UK, Ireland, North America, North Africa, a bunch of other countries. Sedgening's a publicly listed French technology business with, it's like an octopus's arms in many, many places, very strong in healthcare data. And then I ended up back here in New Zealand. I'll tell you how that all worked out later on. Since being back in New Zealand, I arrived back here about 20 months ago. I am here with my amazing wife and my two young boys. If you look at the photo, you'll notice one of them has his eyes closed. That's because any family photo, if you've got children, you'll notice you will never ever get both children with their eyes open at the same time. It just does not happen. But we came back here simply because I wanted, or my wife Kate and myself wanted our boys to grow up in New Zealand. I want to experience the freedom and the opportunity that's here. Since being back here, I've been trying to contribute into the New Zealand business community through roles within mainland angel investors, startup Queenstown Lakes, chair of the Otago Rail Trail Business Network, and now obviously doing bits like this and being a mentor at the business school, which is fantastic. I started a consultancy, Pink Stag, really angled at trying to fill a little bit of gap that goes on in New Zealand boards, where there seems to be a missing link of understanding technology and its place and the risks, etc., and how to utilize it within business. Socially, look, I just love hanging out with my family. They're just amazing. Friends, love cycling. Was mad enough to be the oldest competitor in the Tour of Southland last year. And for a guy who spends most of his career in front of a desk, I love working with my hands, so odd jobs and bits and pieces. Anyway, that's enough about me. Um, by the way, I heard this is a 60-minute presentation. I am not entirely sure how long this is going to go. We could be here for 30 minutes, we could be here for 45, we might be bang on 60. We'll see how we go. All right, so a little bit of a scene set here. When you talk about business and you get into anything, there's so many different subjects you could go into, and so many, they all have a value, and they all could probably be whole modules within an MBA, and they're definitely all worth more than an hour of somebody's time and discussion. But it's impossible in a session like this to cover across all of those. So what we're going to do is we're just going to pick out a few, and we're just going to take them at a really, really high level, almost in that fireside chat type scenario, where we're just saying, hey, we're going to keep it really high level. We're just going to talk about a few observations on a few points. And the ones that I think are probably the most punchy, the ones that I've seen in my career, probably have the biggest impact if not done correctly, if that makes sense. I don't know if anybody is a fan of Billy Connolly. Billy Connolly is a Scottish comedian, absolute brilliant bloke, toured out to New Zealand many, many times. But if you ever watch Billy Connolly as a comedian, he starts one story and then he tangents off into another story. And then eventually, if you're lucky, he'll come back to the original story before the end of the night. This may end up like that. So just prepare you a little bit. We've got some slides. They should provide some structure, but where I may end up rambling off on a little direction of something that comes into my mind and then pulling it back. So it's going to be a little bit fluid as we move through here. One thing I just ask you to think about is remember that this is at that high level. So we are on Mars and we're looking back at Earth. Okay, we're not getting down to the minutiae of detail. There's even a few slides in here which I'd say probably have a bit much detail, a little bit too much detail in them. And I'm not going to read out word by word by word. That absolutely kills me. So I'll keep them in there just because they might be of value within the deck if the deck is shared. That was my thinking. Now, interaction to me was a must, but now we're in a scenario where it's not going to happen. So I don't know how to work, but I'll throw out the odd question. And if you can type quickly, Tony might be able to flick those answers back to me before we move on. So we'll give that a try. If it doesn't work, hey, we'll just can it and move on. Hope that sounds good to everyone. Okay, so today I'm going to talk around strategy in the loosest term. It's the core of what I'm going to talk about, but it is not actually strategy itself I'm going to speak about. Now, the reason I've chosen to speak about this is often it's the same fundamental mistakes that are made over and over and over, and I see it everywhere. And those fundamental mistakes getting made, just one or two within certain areas, has a major impact on the business. And so I just thought if I could pull out these tiny little learnings that I had along the way, little observations, it may help. Some of it may just be ramblings of a madman, but I'll let you be the judge of that in your own time. So over the years, I think this slide here shows frameworks for creating a strategy. And this is from 1958 through to 2023, 2024. Sees all the, and you'll see comments in there like pest and bits and pieces, things that you've probably been learning during your MBA and just general business careers. Now, my question was going to be, and so let's just try this and then we'll see whether it works out or not. I'll pause for 30 seconds. My one question at the moment is, what is the one common limitation they all have? So what is the one limitation they all have in common? So if someone could try and type an answer, we'll see if that goes to Tony. We'll see if Tony can tell me the answer. I'll give you 20 seconds.
Still waiting.
Don't leave Tony hanging, guys. That's just not fair.
Yeah, come on,
Come on.
guys.
No?
Once someone's put
Okay.
implementation.
Yes, absolutely. Whoever that person is, 100% correct. Okay, that is the limitation they all have. They're great models to help you create your strategy, but the limitation they all have is that they're not implemented or supported correctly. They have no value at all. again, your strategy has no value at all. So frameworks are great, but their impact depends on quite a few things. So what I'm going to do now, thank you very much to that individual, by the way, whoever you were.
Thank you,
Fantastic.
Lucas.
Who was it? Sorry? Lucas, I think. Okay.
Thank you, Lucas.
Fantastic. Now, remember I spoke about the Billy Connolly piece where you're going to go off on a tangent and then come back? And I told you I wasn't going to talk about strategy. The one thing that I just wanted to highlight here is around, just talk about really briefly, is exit strategy. So before a business, and this is just my view, before a business starts thinking about putting down in place their strategy of what they're going to execute, et cetera, and what goals they're going to achieve, et cetera, they need to have a thought process around what their exit strategy is. Now, that may not always be applicable, depending on the business. But if you are the founder of a business or a business that has in the back of the mind that thought that they're looking to be subsumed or whatever it may be, you need to actually be thinking about that and articulating it early on. And the reason is it's absolutely pivotal for you to understand that before you actually start formulating your strategy and putting your strategy together, because one drives into the other. Does that make sense? So everything within your business actually lines up one after the other. And so get your exit strategy defined first. So what have I got here? There are triggers. So your trigger for your exit, understand what that's going to be. Is it going to be the size? Is it going to be the amount of market share that you have? It could be the how. Am I looking to sell the business? Am I looking to be acquired? Am I looking to go to public offering? Am I looking for a management buyout or a merger? These are really important things to understand, because if you don't understand these, if you don't have them clear in your mind, then there's absolutely no point putting your strategy together, because your strategy could actually move you away from what you need to be doing. For example, if you're looking to be acquired, you want to be drawing a bit of lipstick on yourself. You need to make yourself look pretty to those organizations who you're seeking to acquire you. They need to be identified. You need to understand what is attractive to them. And therefore, your strategy for your business is going to feed into making yourself look attractive to them. I hope this makes sense to you all. It makes sense in my mind. I hope it makes sense to you. I'm going to move on. Actually, no, I'm going to give you a quick example of this. Quick example. So when I was in the UK, I worked for a company for a short time for a Kiwi guy, an Aucklander. I won't hold that against him, but he was an Aucklander. And he had in his office, he had a handle, a door handle, which was screwed to the ceiling of his office. And his idea was that his business was just going to shoot up and it was going to burst through the ceiling and it is going to become a gazillionaire. It was a real unicorn idea. And I tell you what, he had a brilliant idea. He had the idea of putting content management systems in the cloud before IBM, before Microsoft, before the others. So he had it using IBM software, but sat it up in the cloud and had a bums on seats model for using. This was way before. This is probably 3, 4, 5 years before those really large, obviously global organizations jumped onto this. So he stole a march. And if you're going for the exit, all you should be doing is focusing on that march, on how many users you can get, how many organizations you can get doing this, because that is your value at the end of the day, because you know those big boys are coming soon. So what he did, though, is he got distracted along the way because he wasn't really clear on identifying his exit, and then distracted on the way and looking at revenue. And so he was thinking about the size of his company, not around the market share. So the size of his company for him was around the revenue coming in. So he started thinking about the skills within his business that he had and how they could actually be used to provide support contracts for software within some major insurance companies and others who had legacy systems, which these guys within his development teams knew. So rather than focusing on what was going to shoot him through the roof, he just started focusing on the wrong thing, which was around getting some money in, some easy money in his eyes, but it moved the business focus away from what it needed to do. So I hope that's an example that people can understand. That makes sense to you, Tony? Just not for me, mate. You're the only person I can see. Great stuff. Thanks, buddy. Right. Okay. Oh shit, we're 20 minutes in already. Okay, I need to start talking quicker. Um, as I said, strategy is at the center, but it's not everything. There's 6 areas I want to discuss, and I'm going to have to speed up. We're going to discuss them within an hour. BHAG, right? If anybody knows what a BHAG is while I'm going through this, can they message Tony for me? We're going to talk about adoption. We're going to talk about scaling. We're going to talk about the board, talk about failing, and we're going to talk about the founder, the CEO, basically about you. And that's what I'm aiming for, about you and your role within an organization, because I'm guessing this is where most of you are at or looking to go to. Tony, did we get anyone telling us what a BHAG is?
Yeah, one response from Lizzie: brave, hairy, audacious goals.
That's pretty well. I reckon that's pretty good. I call them big, hairy, audacious goals, but brave, hairy, audacious goals. I think brilliant. Yeah, same thing. Just a name. Thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to touch on that first. Um, why it's important to have a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, is it pushes the business out of its comfort zone. It creates a requirement for better business alignment and execution. These things are important. Now, going to Billy Connolly ramblings here for a moment. One thing I've noticed since being back in New Zealand, and it's a case, look, I love this country and I so want the businesses here to do amazingly well, and I'll do everything I can to support them. But it's a case of you don't know what you don't know. And the problem with that we've got in New Zealand when we grow up here is we don't realize how big the world actually is. And so our understanding of what big looks like is really askew to what the reality is. And in business, that holds true as well. So what I really want to encourage New Zealand business to start doing is start realizing or start thinking bigger and start thinking about their BHAG and understanding size. So let me give you an example. I think New Zealand has 5 million people. So Australia has 29 million people. Most companies I see here will look at hitting the New Zealand market and thinking they're doing okay, and then they're looking at pushing into Australia. Okay, so on my slide here, that's us in day one. We're looking at New Zealand and possibly Australia. Okay, but then we're looking at those combined, that's 34 million people. All right, the UK has 70 million people alone. So already our BHAG in New Zealand is only half of the size of the UK. A UK business's BHAG is not the UK. The UK business's BHAG is Europe. That's 750 million people. So do you get the idea of the size here, the difference that we're talking about, and the difference how we've got to look at things and understand scale and understand having a big, hairy, audacious goal? It can't, you really have to spend some time and understand the size of the opportunity and have to stretch the organization and stretch your goals. Because you start looking at Asia, that's 1.65 billion people. So we've gone from 5 million, thinking we're doing okay here in New Zealand in a market of 5 million, to an opportunity of a continent of 1.65 billion. And it's really, really hard for businesses in New Zealand to understand this. But that is the size of opportunity, and that's where big, hairy, audacious goals need to go to if you really want your business to charge. And there's a few ways that you go about this. And look, I know this is contentious, guys. I know some people will disagree with it. That's just my observations. You can do with them as you will. I'm not precious about it at all. Oh, I feel like we've gone forward a bit there. Oh no, it is coming up. Okay, so some examples here, and these are really high profile, but there's something that these companies did well. So Amazon, Tesla, they announced their BHAGs from day one. Everyone in their company knew the BHAG. Everyone in Amazon knew that the inspiration for Amazon was that to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. And in Tesla, it was to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. They had these BHAGs. Now, obviously, we're not talking about the next Tesla, the next Amazons, etc. But it's just showing that these organizations started with a BHAG. They went really big early and everybody aligned in behind that. Everything within the strategy aligned behind that. Everybody from day one knew that that's what they were trying to do. Make sense? think big. All right, so a little bit of a summary on BHAG, because I am conscious of time and I know I ramble a bit. BHAGs, okay, I'm just going to go through the highlights here. They need to be bold and inspiring. They need to have a long-term focus. A BHAG isn't something you're going to smash over in 3 years. Okay, BHAG is going to take a long time for you to achieve. If you can smash it over in 3 years, it's not a BHAG. You know, they need to be clear and measurable. And that sounds like just, oh yeah, that's an obvious. But it's not. People create goals, create BHAGs, and then you say, okay, how are we going to know when we've got there? What does that actually look like? How do we define the stages along the way? And then, oh, so you have to just think about that. Okay, they do align and unify, and they are different from your vision statement. But as I said, you guys can have a look through those slides in more detail a little bit later, because I think I'm going to end up running out of time tonight. Moving swiftly on to the second point. I hope everybody got BHAG. Give me a thumbs up, or somebody if you did. Hope that was all right. Adoption. So we've got our strategy. Thanks for the thumbs up over there. So we've got our, or 2 thumbs up. Oh, we're flying now. We've got our strategy, and now we have to think about adoption. So here's another question, and we've got some good responses so far. So hopefully we can keep that going. The question is, who should we communicate our strategy to? So I'm going to wait for 10, 20 seconds again and just let someone throw a couple of answers down for me, or as many of you as you like. I'm going to sit back and wait for a moment. Actually, I'll have a sip of my tea. Anything coming through, Tony?
No, there's an irony here, I think, Andrew. We're talking about communication and no one's communicating.
Wow. Okay. Well, look, let me tell you a little story while we wait for you guys to communicate. Remember, if you're on this call, it's because you're a part of the MBA program or the MBA alumni. You are the leaders of today and tomorrow. This interaction and communication should just be, an everyday, not a problem occurrence. So recently, and I've seen this so many times, when I was with Sedgwick, we were acquiring businesses as part of a growth strategy for an avenue of it. And since I've been in New Zealand, I've been helping businesses with little bits of advisory work, et cetera, consultancy, and just sitting within my board and trustee roles, et cetera. I was with one, what is highlighted as a real success story within business, within the region. I can't give the name of it. And my first question to the founder was, tell me about your strategy. Show it to me. And he's like, well, it's in my head. Okay, well, that's great. Does everybody, if I walk down the shop floor, my question was, does everybody know the strategy in the business? Yeah, I think so. So if I walk down the shop floor there and I ask that chap over there on that machine if he can tell me what the company strategy is, could he? Oh, probably not. Okay, and it's just a fundamental issue that I see over and over again. And I think it's really, really important that we start communicating properly what our strategy is. Okay, imagine being in a boat and I give you all paddles. There's 10 of us in the boat. I give you all paddles. It's a round boat. And I just say paddle. Where are we going to go? We're not going to go anywhere, maybe around in circles if we're lucky, but we're certainly not going to go in a direction. Now, if I told you clearly we're going to paddle to that island, we've all got a direction, we know what we're going to do. That is exactly what happens in businesses, believe it or not. So when we're communicating, once we've got our strategy, a really, 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 really important thing is to communicate it and communicate it and communicate it and communicate it and keep on top of that. So we communicate to our internal stakeholders, and do not underestimate the importance in communicating to every single staff member that they understand what your strategy is and empowering them to make business decisions based on that strategy. And maybe I'll get onto this. I think there's a slide about this a little bit further on, but I'll touch on it now and then we can touch it on again because it's a really, really, really important point.
Sorry, Andrew, first answer up from an anonymous attendee. was to communicate to staff and align their roles to it.
That's good. Yes.
Second, clients and potential clients, customers, staff in capital letters, everyone on your website and collateral, that's Lizzie, and then anonymous, everyone.
Yes, absolutely right. All of them are right. That's absolutely brilliant. Perfect. Thank you very much. Thank you, those of you who responded. That's brilliant. The one thing I was just talking about here was around the importance of the staff understanding what the strategy is. And that's because of decision making. You need to empower, and they need to understand that every single decision that they make in the business that day, and the next day, and the next day has to have this precursor to it, which is, does this help us achieve our strategy? If the answer is ever no, then you stop doing it. Or you have to come up with some really great idea or reason why you would continue doing it. But it's a fundamental. Now, if people don't know what the strategy is, and this sort of aligns also with the partners, with investors, and with others. So it's not just your staff. It's the same. If they don't know what your strategy is, how can you possibly expect the decision making to be correct, to align to the execution of the strategy? Does that make sense? Hope it does. On the slide here, we've put down, that's me. I'll put down this sort of who I think we should communicate to. And there's going to be more. And some of these you might say, well, they'll already know. The board of directors should already know your strategy. Yeah, absolutely, they should. You'd be surprised, though, the amount of businesses that you go into who have a board strategy and they have their working strategy. And that's because there's a misalignment, but we'll go on board pieces again a little bit later on. Okay. The other thing around adoption is singularity of focus. I sort of chuckle at this stuff because you see it all the time. If you were out for a 5K run and you were out there to smash your PB, that was your focus of the day. You got up in the morning, you got your running shoes on, and you went, all right, today I'm going to go smash my PB on the 5K run. Whilst you're running around, are you going to stop and look at the new Bentley or whatever the latest shiny car is over there? Or the nice tree that's an autumn blossom or a spring blossom, whatever it may be? You're not. You're going to keep your head down, you're going to keep focus, and you're going to run. And that is what needs to happen if you're trying to execute on a strategy, not just you, but the entire business. Okay, they need to stop worrying about the shiny things, the superfluous things. You have to try and get that singularity of focus within the team. I'm not going to go through the bullet points on the slide because I think you probably read through those while I've been talking, and I think I've made my point on it. Okay, decision making. And I just touched on this a moment ago. So the biggest reason you communicate your strategy is to enable better decisions. Okay, better decision making by your internal and external stakeholders. That's the main reason why you're doing this. And again, because they can make better decisions that align into your strategy, which will help you execute on that strategy. Every single decision by your internal stakeholders, and I'd say those external ones go to your close partners, etc., has to be, again, as I said a moment ago, does this align or help us achieve our strategy? Yes, no. And they've just got to be brutal. If it's no, and maybe because I worked in accelerated businesses, that was my thing. It was accelerated. It was about getting business growth quickly. So we were brutal on this. And I suppose if it's more of a lifestyle business, you can spend your time and have a little look at this thing over here and a little look at that. But if you're about growth, you can't. You don't have that ability. You've just got to focus on what you're trying to achieve. So decision making is absolutely critical. Assessing situations as a leader and weighing up options as a leader. They're main skills that you have to be able to develop. If you don't have them already, find a mentor who can help you, because they're things that are relied on within the business. They keep momentum. And if you don't have momentum, you start having decision paralysis. Once you have decision paralysis, walk away. There's no point. You're not going to accelerate. You're not going to go anywhere. Again, this all sounds pretty brutal. I know. I apologize. Just my observations. One tool, though, this is another Billy Connolly segue. Who can someone just maybe just through Gary or maybe thumbs up or something, are people aware of this model, which are the spheres of influence? It might take a little minute to come through. I'm going to make the assumption. Gary, is this in your MBA program at all, this model?
It potentially is, I think, in transformational leadership and people and culture.
Great. Okay, so hopefully then to everybody, this isn't a new model, but it's a model I live by. I use this model in everyday life and decision-making processes. So it can be used as an individual, but you can use it as an organization as well. It's a great model. So what we've got, it's right there, it's right in front of you. What can I control directly? What can't I control directly, but I can influence? And what's outside of my control and my influence? Okay, and then you have to think about, where do we spend our time? And where do we spend our time as leaders, but also where do we spend our time as an organization? Now, I presented to a group of leaders in Central Otago 2 weeks ago, and I asked them where they felt they should spend their time. And they, and the majority of them, said that they should spend their time in indirect influence. Probably nice, but not right. Okay, your job as a leader is to spend the majority of your time is in that direct control piece. That is where I feel anyway. That's my learning. So I think leaders should focus their energy there first. This is a zone of what I call leadership leverage. And then this zone out here, look, it's outside of your control. How much time do I actually give that in a day when running a business? Very, very little, unless, and I'll get onto this a little bit, unless I'm looking through my telescope and I can see way down the track something's going to come that's going to impact my business. It's outside of my control, but I know it's going to have an impact, and therefore I need to try and bring it inside my control or influence. So then I'll have a look at whether I accept it as it is, I adapt to it, or I can shift it. So the shift is, can I actually move that into an area of indirect influence for me? This model, which I think got lots of thumbs up, you've all seen before, please, please, please hold on to this model and just take your brain back to it all the time. If something's annoying you, just sit there and think, is it within my direct control? Well, if it is, do something about it. If it's not, stop stressing about it. That's the way I use it in life, and it just makes things so much easier. Cool. Okay, so that's it at the moment. Now I'm going to move on adoption. Again, this is so high level. This is nuts. We really are on Mars and we're looking at Earth. We're not giving any of this the justice that it deserves. But we've only got a certain amount of time, and I want to give you as much as I can within that time. Scaling. I would say, I'd say there's a handful of businesses I've ever come across, whether acquiring, working for, mentoring, advising, whatever it may be within groups, that actually know how to scale and scale properly. I think I've got a bit of content on slides here, which is more for you guys afterwards than me to talk through. But it is an area, if you're going to be a business leader and you're looking for business growth, it has to be front of mind from day one, not from end of year one, or when we get to this milestone, or when I get that investor, or it's day one stuff. You have to be thinking about it. Okay, so there's a difference between growth and scaling, and I don't think people understand this. Okay, so scaling is growing your business by increasing revenue faster than the costs through efficient systems, people, processes. Yeah, it's about implementing foundations to grow the ability to do more with less. That's what scaling is doing. The key elements we've got down there: strong foundations, repeatable processes, team readiness, technology leverage market opportunity. We're going to talk a little bit about this through a couple more slides. So I'll whiz over the slide as we're at the 40-minute mark. Team, when you're scaling a business, it's not even when you're scaling a business, when you're starting a business, when you're running a business and you've got your strategy defined, and you're thinking about scaling, that thought process has to be into every part of your business, and that includes the team. And where we go wrong with the business is quite often we look at our short-term needs instead of our long-term requirements. And actually what that does is that just boots a problem down the track for us. I'd almost prefer to have a little bit of short-term pain for a bit of long-term gain. And that's because it creates a sustainability within the business. So think when you're hiring your team, think about the individuals and think about how they are going to help you with your scaling of your business. I hope this is making some sense to you. I've got some notes down there. Think about their mindset, their skills development, their energy, professionalism, etc. But just really think about your team and who you're hiring and into what roles when you think about scaling. Now, the board piece I'm going to park for a little bit because I've got a section on board, and board's a really critical piece here. One avenue which I used repeatedly to scale businesses and accelerate their growth was partners. And for those, let me just clarify what this means. So, for example, I may have an offering which is complementary to a much larger organizations or a similar size organizations or an organization in a market that I'm not in, that I want to enter into. It could be complementary to theirs. It could be something that they want. So what I'll do is I'll create partnerships with them and I'll get them to front my product. I will provide I'll feed and water it. I'll provide in the marketing resource. I'll provide in a level of sales champion resource. But basically what I'm relying on is their marketing and their sales teams, etc., to push my product because it helps them sell their product. I hope that makes sense. There are many, many different models on how you can work with partners and create a relationship. But the important thing here is what I've just done is for minimal amount of money. I've just, for an example, would be Logicalis, Information Insights, working with somebody like Splunk or Tableau or one of these organizations. All of a sudden, I have my sales team gone from maybe 20, 30, 40 people to hundreds and hundreds of people, and across many, many markets, and with existing relationships and many, many clients that would take me years and years and years to get into. But what I've just done by thinking out of the box and thinking about what I'm creating and how it could actually be complementary to others' products within the marketplace and then be leveraged by them for their own, and having that forward thinking, I'm then creating a model which accesses into all of their resources. And it gives me overnight scaling. And it's underutilized. I've spoken to a couple of new businesses in New Zealand who are looking into new markets. Partners weren't even in the mind at all. It's just not discussed here, but it's a really, really effective, really good way to scale your business. If you want to know more about that, talk to me later. I could go on all day. It's a hugely successful way to do it. But there's a lot of feeding, watering. There's a lot of pitfalls. There's a lot of stuff that you have to know to do it well. And if you don't do it well, you can burn yourself long term. Other bits we've got here: documentation, process, procedures, systems. I'll go into this in a little bit more detail in a moment. Gosh, I'm flying out of time here, and I thought I was going to do this in 20 minutes. But as I said at the start, okay, they have to be thought about from day one. Everything you do on day one, can it scale? No point putting in something on day one that is not going to be able to scale. It's just no point. It's just futile. You're just wasting time and energy. Okay, so again, I'm going to bang through a few slides here, which are really just some content, hoping more as a takeaway. Documentation and tools. They provide organizational clarity, they provide the accountability, they provide the opportunity to share knowledge, and they maintain an operational excellence. Proper documentation and use of effective tools support our organizational clarity and accountability. Leaders should always implement systems that facilitate knowledge sharing and enable operational excellence. Okay, that's our role. Processes, procedures, systems. Defining clear process and procedures ensures consistency and efficiency. Leaders should establish guidelines that empower teams to work effectively and independently. We should future-proof our systems. So when we're looking at I know we touched on this on the previous slide, I know, but when we're looking at anything to help us, especially in our systems, within our information systems, we have to look at how that's going to scale with our business requirements and really look at it. Don't just look and say, oh, nice, this tool I've got, yeah, it can go to enterprise size. That's fantastic. It may go to enterprise size, but the cost at enterprise size may be prohibitive. It may create so much bespoking to meet your requirements at enterprise size that actually it's going to become unruly and it's going to become a distraction from your core business. I mean, how many organizations do we see out there nowadays who are basically IT businesses? They're not supposed to be. Yeah, their core business is running a hospital, but they've got IT teams absolutely vast and expertise and skills, etc. They've lost their focus. Okay, I'm going to hold myself there because I'm going to feel myself getting into a rant about that. Summary on scalability. It's important, without a doubt. Look, I'm just going to fly through that slide. I'm going to leave that. It's just one for the pack. We're at 47 minutes and I've got 3 pieces to go. Oh my God. Okay, board. There was a question here, but I'm going to fly past the question. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of rambling though, because this to me is super, super important. And 99.9% of businesses get it wrong. And I'd say 99.99999% of New Zealand businesses get it completely wrong. And this is a board. Actually, I'll throw up all of this so you can read it while I go on. In my mind, and I was taught this, and I 100% believe it because I've lived it, breathed it, and I see it work. The board should always reflect the needs of the business at the time. Okay, the board should be there to support the business in achieving its strategy. It does have a governance requirement, without a doubt. It's there to have that governance requirement. It's there to be the sage eyes for the investors, etc., and the regulatory requirements, etc. But a board can be so valuable to a business, especially a young business, especially a small startup business, incredibly valuable. And think about it this way. If you're a small business, a medium-sized business, you have constraints on your business. You have constraints in the sort of personnel that you can bring on board because you've got budget restraints. And maybe you're not big enough anyway to attract the top talent within an area. So you're going to have a skills deficit compared to those real big boys out there. Your board helps fill that if you're smart. So let's say I've got a marketing manager. Actually, I can't afford a chief marketing officer, but I need that skill set. I could go out there and find someone for my board who is actually a chief marketing officer with great skill set, great contact, and I'm not asking to do it for my business, but I'm asking to mentor my marketing manager. I'm asking to be that point of contact for my marketing manager to say, hey, is this the right way to do this? Can I check with you about this? So your board is actively involved in your business, but it's helping provide that level of expertise that your business needs. That's a good board. A board of individuals who are willing to help your business achieve its strategy, not just sit there, clip the ticket, get the money and go home. That's the board that you want. The other thing is, though, that the board should always reflect the need of the business. So the board in year 5 should be vastly different to the board in year 1 because the business should have progressed to a level. So therefore, it should always reflect what you're doing. All of a sudden, you're looking at going into the Asian markets. You want a member on your board who's got experience in that. Or going into Europe, you want experience. So it should be reflecting. Um, I just can't believe that I've rambled so much and we're at 50 minutes already. Because again, this vital piece around the board. Think about it. Think about your boards. Um, think about owning board dynamics. It is your responsibility as the business leader, if you're in that CEO, MD role, if you're in that founder role, whatever it may be, it's your responsibility to own the board dynamics. That means that you are creating narrative. You're the one who is working with your chairman to ensure that the board meets the business requirements. So you're helping, hopefully you've got the right chairman on board, chairperson on board, and you're actually working with them tightly so that they are aware of who's required at what stage within the business and the board's reflecting the business needs. But you need to own that. Okay, don't just sit back and let the board run you. It is your job to be proactive on the front foot, work with your chairman and make sure that the board is there supporting you. Quick run on. Okay, failing. We fail. It happens. Okay, again, we had more questions here, but with 8 minutes to go, I will fly past those common points of failure. Failure to delegate. Again, leadership conference the other day, most common thing that people put their hands up was failure to delegate. It's a skill set you must learn, and it's about trust. It is absolutely about trust. It's about empowerment. It's about being focused on the output, not necessarily on the journey that gets to the output, because everybody will do things differently. It doesn't necessarily, as long as you get to the end goal, that's the important thing. So think about that. Distracted. Remember, we spoke about the 5K run. Don't get distracted. Okay. Poor stakeholder communication. Oh, it is unbelievable to me that people sit back and are worried about talking to their stakeholders. I could talk to them all day long about anything they want. I'm happy to be the champion for my company. I'll talk their ear off about it. I'll tell them everything that's going on. There's some commercially sensitive information, some regulatory information I can't talk about, but outside of that, I want them completely on board. I want them understanding. If I don't do that, that's when I run into problems. That's when I run into misunderstandings, misalignments, and that starts slowing me down. And I do not want to slow down. Not adapting to market changes. Look, there's no point building sedans if everybody's driving four-wheel drives, is there? So if all of a sudden you're building sedans, everyone's moving to their four-wheel drives, you've got to have a look at what the market is. At the end of the day, you're still a car builder. That's sort of what I'm saying. Just have a look at what's down the track, but adapt to it. And that's that whole thing of looking through your telescope, which I'll jump on in a second. Failure to prioritize. It is everywhere. And actually, it's a skill set, and find a mentor. If you don't know how to prioritize, find a mentor, because if you don't prioritize, you find yourself running around like a headless chicken. Things don't get done properly. You're not spending the right time in the right places to get the right outcomes. And therefore, you can't expect the business growth. Fail fast. Really simple on failing, fail fast. If I hired someone, they could interview brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly. But once they're in the workplace, I could find that they don't fit in. They didn't fit in with the team. They oversold themselves. They didn't quite have what I needed. Do I have the time to invest in that? Yes, no. Do I got to be pretty cutthroat, fail fast? Sorry, bang, that didn't work out. Get the next one. It could be with anything. It's just not about staff. It's about anything within your business. It could be throwing a new product out there. Didn't work. Bang, fail. Next one. Fail fast. Don't procrastinate. Don't sit on your hands. Don't slow yourself down. Don't let your ego get in the way. It's not an ego thing. Yeah, we have to fail within business. It just happens. Every single business has failures. It's not just singular to you. So just get over it. Fail fast to move on. Last one. We might actually make this in time. This is incredible. Okay. The founder, the CEO, you. We play a major role in the organization, obviously. Your leadership style, decision-making processes, they significantly influence the company's success. The two most common mistakes of the leader is they're internally focused and they don't focus on their own personal development. That's my personal thought. So they focus too much internally and they don't focus enough on their own personal development. And hopefully I'm going to have enough time to tell a quick story about that. So your job as a leader is is to be looking what's next. So my thought is, and I'm sure Gary or Tony, sorry, will probably say that I'm wrong on this, and sure all the textbooks will say I'm wrong. But my thought and my experience and observing really good leaders, business leaders, especially leaders of accelerated growth businesses, is 70% of their time is focused externally. They're on that telescope. They're looking off into the future. They're seeing what's coming. They're championing the organization externally. Everything, 70% of it's external focus. That's the job of you. You're the visionary for the business. You know, the market reader, the energy carrier we've got there. The ones who fail have it around the wrong way. They're 70% internally focused. They're micromanaging. They're not delegating to their C-suite. They haven't brought on board a team that can actually deliver. You know, given direction, let them go, let them deliver. That's what you need to be able to do, because it's your job to be looking around the corner, looking off into the future, looking at what's coming next. It's absolutely vital. But the most important thing, without a shadow of a doubt, the most important thing in this whole presentation is around you and your personal development. If a business and you are matched on day one, so the business and your abilities are matched on day one, and you you don't take any action yourself about your personal development, you will find on year 3, year 4, year 5, the business has moved on and you're no longer the leader able to run that business. And so what you do is you have individuals like myself would come in, would buy that business, would say, actually, it's a great business, but the leader doesn't fit the business anymore. They don't have the skill set to run this business. But when we're talking about personal development, we're not talking about development of understanding business ideas and business piece. We're talking about the person themselves and their ability to actually be, how to say, almost like a holistic leader within the organization. Let me tell you a quick story about why this is so important to me. And I don't think I'm going to do it a lot of justice here, but within the Henley Business School MBA program, they have a personal development module. Before I hit that MBA, I'd never heard about it, really. I'd seen books and bits and pieces. They were all woolly to me. I was some boy from Dunedin, New Zealand. I'd worry about personal development. A guy called Chris Dalton is the program lead for that within Henley Business School. And he's very, very well thought of throughout Europe. He's one of the leaders in Europe on personal development, written a number of books. Chris Dalton is his name. And after my first session, or our first, whatever you want, classes in personal development, it sort of clicked to me. And as it went on and on through the MBA, I saw its value. And I started to understand that there's a requirement for me as a person to grow if I want to be the leader within the business. There's a, how am I put this correctly? There's a value to it, which is, it's non-tangible really, but without it, you're never going to be that top level leader within the business, but you're also never actually going to probably be that happy in life, to be honest, because the business will burn you. It'll take you out of your comfort zone. You won't know how to handle all the stresses and the strains and the pressures that come onto you. And your personal development journey will help you build the armor for that. But anyway, so I did this MBA. I did the personal development piece, and I found it incredibly valuable. Then I went a number of jobs later. I was working at Sedgedean, and I was working at Sedgedean when COVID hit. And I'd gone from this charger, all about accelerated growth, to having to now deal with, you know, hundreds of staff in many countries, now having to homeschool, having people pass away, having their loved ones pass away, having mental health issues, worrying about return to work, all these things. I didn't have the skill set to deal with this as within my leadership skill set, because that required empathy. There needed to be an empath leader for that. So I called Chris Dalton. I said, Chris, this is a situation I'm in. I need help. I need more personal development. I need to grow better as an individual to be able to handle this situation better. Luckily enough, Chris had some time and was writing another book and thought I'd be a good case study. And he took me on himself. And we spent a long time together on that journey. But it gave me the tools I needed, the growth I needed within myself to be able to manage that business and look after individuals and become a more well-rounded individual. It actually took me so far to the point of personal development that I decided that actually, what was I doing? I was charging and charging and charging through Europe. I couldn't get probably to any higher roles really. And what was the point of it? I was going to earn lots and lots of money, but I was probably never going to see my children, and I would probably have lost my wife. So what was the value in that? And actually, personal development and reflection within it made me go, actually, that's not what's important in life. What's important in life are the things like your loved ones and watching your kids grow up and being there for them, and going on those nice walks with your wife. That's the important stuff in life. And that's when I said to Janine, hey, you know, we're out of here in the nicest way possible. But we spent a year together first, and then brought the family over here to New Zealand. So my personal development journey was absolutely pivotal in the way that my life has changed, and I think it's the most important thing for a leader to think about. I know we're out of time, so quick line area: focus, self-awareness, empathy, adaptability, resilience, strategic reflection time, continuous learning habit. Leave that. Quick conclusion. We've touched on 6 areas. We touched on them on such a high level. It's with such tiny amounts of detail that we haven't done any of them justice. But I hope throughout this, there's been a few little learnings for you. I hope I'll be able to provide a little bit of sage advice. Last thing to finish on, here's a few of my favorites that I love. These aren't mine. Actually, one of them is. These aren't. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. All this is saying is surround yourself with the smartest people possible. It's the best way to be. Get your ego, throw it out the door, and get in rooms with people that you just sit there in awe of and learn from them. Be a sponge. That's the rooms you want to be in, not the ones that you're strutting around. That's the wrong room. This was given to me by John Wickstrom. He started Magic Memories up in Queenstown. He's probably one of New Zealand's great business leaders. And he tells his kids this too. If you're in a room with 5, then you're the 6th. And you'll see this in business. Business has its unsavory characters. And they are like the old schoolyard bullies. They do attract, they're like moths and light. They do attract the young ones, and don't be one of them. All right? Differentiate yourself. Always look to push your own path. And this is my one. As you're walking around, as your business career rolls out, just think, listen, observe, reflect, adopt what you need to, and then review it. It's almost like a process. Listen, observe, reflect on it, adopt it, then review it. Did it work? Didn't it work for me? Anyway, 63 minutes. Sorry I ran slightly over there, Gary, but that is me.
No, thank you very much, Chris, Andrew. That was really interesting, really insightful, and thank you for being so open in some of your journey.